Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Wright here with Beard Bros Media. I'm also with Verdant Strategies and 420 CPA. Today, I'm happy to have Steve Riparip here of Tact Firm with me. How are you doing today, Steve?
Hey, doing great. We just finished up big weeks of 420, and so, it's been exciting in the industry.
Yeah, exciting times on 420. What are some cautionary tales for 420, actually? We'll dive right into that part of it.
Yeah, so the fun thing is that we get really busy around 420 because we focus on retail and we do
Mhm,
retention for dispensaries. So a
mhm.
lot of that involves sending out messaging, email blasts, text messages, push notifications. And so there's a lot to say around this time of year, a lot of attention that we need to grab from customers. And
Mhm.
so yeah, what we noticed this year was a lot more emphasis on the experience of 420,
Mm.
turning it into a really great event, getting a lot of brands involved, getting personnel, specific personnel, staff involved in different ways too. And obviously, there's a bunch of deals. Some of them can be excessive, but some stores that we saw, they didn't have too many crazy deals.
Mhm.
They emphasized certain brands. They took this as an opportunity to do something. And leading up to 420, what I would talk about and tell our retailers is be intentional with 420. Do it for the right reasons. It's a great way to give back to the community, reward your customers. So yeah, give them some good percentages off, treat them well. Um, but don't just discount for discount's sake, just because everyone else is doing it. Um, just allow your customers to save some money and use it also as a really good opportunity to capture those emails and phone numbers, build your list, and build that rapport with your customer base.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. So tell me about Tact Firm. What do you do at Tact Firm?
Yeah, so retail is our thing. We love retail retention. And the way I got started with it was I was working with some retailers independently as a freelancer. And I came in doing some brand work, some design work, and some light marketing. And I would get into their CRMs and their POS systems and all their tech. And I noticed that, like, oh, hey, there's a bunch of data in here that no one's looking at. So I was curious
Mhm.
and I started to dive into the data, specifically the customer data. And the retail owners at that time, they would say, hey, we need more customers. What can we do to get more customers, more customers? And I looked at the data and I'm like, well, you've had tens of thousands of customers already come through your door in the past 3, 4 years that you've been open. What about trying to get these people back? And so I started looking at more of that data and I noticed two really shocking statistics that were
Mm.
consistent across a lot of stores. The first one was that about half of all of a dispensary's customers only shopped once and then they've never returned. So they come in once and then they never come back. About half of their customers. And then the other shocking statistic was about 70 to 80% haven't shopped in over 60 days and they don't plan on coming back. So I realized that retailers have a huge retention problem. They're churning out customers, they're walking right in and never coming back. They have this huge leaky bucket with just these huge holes. And so I started out trying to figure out how do we get these customers back? How do we reduce that churn, keep them from leaving, and keep them falling in love with the stores over and over? And that's what we do on a larger scale now.
Nice. So capturing customer data is key and owning your data is key. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, we've worked with some retailers that have been open for 7 to 10 years. And
Mhm.
by then, you should have a email list of, I don't know, 50 to 100,000, depending
Mm.
on the location you're at. And I get really sad when I go into their systems and they have like 8,000 emails when I know they've had a couple 100,000 people come to their doors over those 10 years. And so that's a really big missed opportunity because every email is worth a lot of money.
Mm.
And then we get with some retailers that maybe were open 2 or 3 years. They have tens of thousands of emails because they did a really good job capturing that data. And so that turns into money in a lot of different forms. So it's very, very valuable to capture data, own your data, and keep up with it as well.
Do you find that it's different depending on if it's like a limited license area or not? Is it harder in an area that is not limited license?
So I got my start in Michigan. That's where I grew up. And I saw a little bit of the rise and fall of the industry there. I got started around 2018, 2019. And we know unlimited license state, and there's a lot of competition in the city of Ann Arbor. I think there was like 20 to 30 dispensaries
Mhm.
in a very small radius. So tons of competition. But what I noticed, because we worked with some multiple dispensaries in that city at the same time, and all these stores, they were getting a good flow of new customers coming in, but they were failing to capture that information. And so when we looked at that data, even in areas like that where it's super saturated, a lot of customers are coming in, they're trying out all the different stores. They might be discount hoppers or welcome package hoppers, knowing that they can visit a different dispensary probably every week and get a new, first timer discount. But even in places like that, people are coming by. Now, the couple areas that we've noticed that are harder to get
Mhm.
that information would be more tourist areas,
Mm.
um, because people are just coming through, passing through, and so they're not going to give you their information, and you don't really want to capture people's information that are never going to come back because they're just visiting, they're passing through. Think of areas, vacation areas, vacation spots, high traffic, high tourist areas, certain downtowns in major cities. Those places have low retention because they just simply have people passing through. And there's a totally different strategy that they need to have compared to the stores in more urban, suburban areas where they have the regulars coming around.
Yeah. So tell me, once you gather this information for your retail customers, what exactly are you doing? How do you work with your retail customers?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we do is we don't do these one-off services. Like, we don't do email. We use email marketing as a tool.
Mhm.
We don't do email marketing. We don't
Mm.
do design. Those are all tools for retention. And so the way I look at it is, how do we get customers back? How do we make these stores more money
Mhm.
by bringing their customers back in that probably wouldn't have spent money with them, and we got them to come back not just once but over and over. And so what we do is we install a retention engine, is what I call it. So we look at the entire funnel from
Mhm.
how are they getting customers, how are customers first making their purchase, how is their information being captured, how many of them are not coming back at different touch points,
Mhm.
and then how do we basically look at that entire funnel, identify the points of the highest churn, so the points where customers are leaving at the highest amounts,
Mm.
start to plug those holes, fill those gaps, and create this kind of recirculating funnel where people try to slip away from us and drift away. We bring them right back in. And so we have this funnel system, retention engine that we look at because, right, that after that first purchase, about 50% of customers won't come back. If they
Mm.
do come back after that second purchase, around 25 to 35% will not come back. After the third purchase, that's around 20 to 25. And after the fourth purchase, you're down to somewhere between 15 and 20%.
Mhm.
So by the time you get to about four purchases, you've lost about 70 to 80% of your customer base.
Mm.
And so all those points are very critical to have some type of sequence to, well, first you need to identify those points. And then
Mhm.
we put in a plan to um, try to make sure less people fall out after those purchases.
Oh, that's awesome. So, how do you get started with a retail customer? Do you use an audit process, from my understanding, right?
Yeah, it's like people come to us with their race cars and say, "Hey, we have a race coming up. We want to win the race."
Mhm.
We have to look under the hood first to understand what we're going to get into, what we can work with there. Because, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes these retailers have been open for 10 years, but they don't have much of an email list. And so, if you don't have a list, we can't contact your customers.
Mhm.
Also, we've noticed sometimes too is that newer retailers, sometimes they'll buy a list, and which is very bad. First of all, it's like against the law, against regulations. You can't buy a list of people's emails that did not give you permission to message them.
Mm,
And so sometimes we'll come in and we see, hey, you've been open for like 2 months, but you have a list of 30,000 emails. Where did that come from?
mm,
And sometimes what we see too is those types of stores will have blasted those customers, tens of thousands of people. All those people never gave permission to be emailed. They're not expecting it. They hate it. And so they market spam. And so that crushes the dispensaries. It's called the email reputation and their domain
mm.
health. And so, yeah, if you try to send messages to legitimate customers, they'll most likely go to spam.
Oh,
So we need to be aware of that before we get in and do our
uh-huh.
programs, because we need to know the potential issues that are going to decrease the potential results that we could get. If everything
Mhm.
is good in the system, we can get crazy results with our retention engine. But if we get in and we find that, oh, this is messed up, this isn't done correctly, or this part is deficient, then it reduces the type of results that we can get.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Um, so how did you actually get into cannabis? I know, taking a step back here, what made you interested in the industry?
Yeah, so I think it was about 2016 or 17. Uh, I was operating my screen printing and embroidery shop back in
Mhm.
Michigan, and I got connected with a guy that wanted a batch of T-shirts printed for his CBD company, and printed a bunch of shirts. Got to know him pretty well, and he was talking about getting into the new recreational market that was coming up.
Mhm.
And so he introduced me to some of his products that I used for fitness, using the CBD balms that would help with soreness, and the tinctures that he had help with sleep. Because
Mhm.
when you're a 20 something, business owner, and you're just running yourself ragged, hustling every day, sleep is hard to get. And so I found that the CBD, CBN tinctures that he had and some of the gummies that he had really helped me out. So
Mm.
that gave me a little intro to the positive effects of the plant. And then I got introduced to some of the actual THC versions, some of
Mhm.
the mixes with the minor cannabinoids like CBN, and that really helped out too. But during that process, I grew my network, and I met um, this operator that wanted to open up a vertical operation in Michigan. They're starting with their indoor grow processing, and then retail is coming. So I got to help them out with that entire process. Launched
Nice.
that. I worked on the branding, did all the packaging, ordered the packaging from China and other countries. So I got really immersed in that back end. And just from there, just started to grow. The reputation started to spread a little bit. And I got really interested in um, such a new frontier
Yeah,
and being able to do all these fun things.
I love that. So, let's talk about perhaps some geographical areas. Are there any particular areas that you like working in, or that are easy for you to work in, some that are more difficult?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
We So some of our biggest markets that we have stores in, Michigan, California, New Jersey,
Mhm.
Massachusetts, and New Jersey is still, building, and they still have some pretty good pricing. But you'll notice Massachusetts, Michigan, and California, they've been getting crushed.
Right.
And so I don't want to say I love working with those types of markets, because I don't want to see that type of pain. But
Mhm.
those are the type of markets we can be very effective in, because they have been around for so long, specifically California and Michigan. They've had their recreational legalization for so long that these stores have had enough time to build up data,
Mhm.
understand the ebbs and flows of seasonality. What I've noticed about some of the newer markets is that they think their initial growth is going to last forever.
Right.
And we have to remind even our seasoned clients that, okay, summer usually picks up, so don't don't be too excited about that increase in revenue because that's natural. And then September, we typically see a 10 to 25% decrease in revenue because people are going back to school and changing of the season. And then we see that revenue typically decrease a little bit into the holidays, get a little bit of a bump there. But then January, February, March can be brutal. And then we got 420, and then we got summer again. So there's a seasonality that mature markets are used to. And we've noticed where newer markets, they're like, why do we go down in September? It's seasonality. And then they're freaking out in January, February because it's not matching their pro forma projections. Like, have you seen something similar with newer stores in older markets?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say setting expectations based on what you just said. Having been in the industry for a little while for both of us, we can set those realistic expectations for people. So oftentimes I'll see, say, for example, a pro forma that, like you just mentioned, even before somebody's opening their store, and I look at some of these numbers and I say, how many customers are you planning on seeing per day? What's your average basket size projection? Things like that. And sometimes I see they're very, very unrealistic, and they're unrealistic out the gate. So we know when you open a new store, generally, it's going to take a little ramp up time. So I think in new markets, there's so many touch points where we can set realistic expectations for them based on our experience, because you don't want them to have those rose-colored glasses and think it's going to last forever, because it's not always going to last forever. So like, right now in New York, it's looking very positive in some of the stores that we work with. And then others, it's not so great. In the good stores, let them know, hey, make hay while the sun shines. This might not always last, and it probably won't. Wait until, the compression starts kicking in. So yeah, I mean, we have to set realistic expectations. We want to make sure that the people that are actually making money in new markets are investing it in wise places. And they're not just spending it on really nice cars or things like that, because you'll end up having to sell the cars probably in a few years if that's your only plan. So I think our job is, to be hopeful to those that need hope, and realistic and a little bit more level setting for those that are overly optimistic.
Yeah, that makes sense. And,
Mhm.
when I saw that pain in Michigan, when I was working with those retailers, and my mission with my company and with the work I'm doing in cannabis specifically is I want to decrease the failure of great brands run by great people.
Mm.
Because I saw that
Right.
happen too much in Michigan, where I'd get to know these owners, we become friends, really good acquaintances, get to know each other really well, and then through some factors, I would see their businesses fail, their cannabis
Mhm.
businesses, and that really hurt because
Mhm.
they put in their life savings, they got these investors in there, and they had so much invested in, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally. You see them get drained over years and add, all the gray hairs, and you just want the best for them. And sometimes it's a little bit of direction, helping them out in certain areas, but a
Mhm.
lot of it is like financial management of, like, we don't deal with inventory, but there's a lot of great consultants out there in software and tech with inventory on how to manage it better, how to understand your sales velocity and sell through and turnover. And if these retailers had those tools way back and understood them better, then that would save a lot of pain. But with our focus in retention and customers and this whole marketing end is how can how can we be an investment for these retailers? We're not an expense to
Mhm.
where they give us a dollar, we make them back 3, 5, $10 back.
Mhm.
And we do that all the time. And so for me, like when I construct this retention engine, this system, it's how do we create an investment vehicle with it to where it's churning out positive return and something that can actually be tracked and measured. Right? We don't just gather the data initially just to see some pretty numbers. We use this as baselines and say, okay, here's where you're at. Here's how it might change seasonally and fluctuate, but here's where we can get you to, here's where we're going to improve. And during
Mhm.
that audit process, we gather all those different metrics to understand the retention health. because we got to know, like, what do we need to improve? What are the biggest levers that we can pull here? What are the biggest holes and gaps that we can fill to
Mhm.
see these brands succeed?
Right. No, definitely. So I think we talked about stores in different geographical areas based on where the market is. How about stores in different stages of their growth? Those that are expanding or those that are contracting, how are those different? How do you approach those differently?
Oh yeah, it's crazy how different these stages are. So new stores. So I can run you through a couple different,
Mm-hmm.
almost like tips and tricks, frameworks for different levels of stores, and specifically what we've seen working with these stores, analyzing them, doing audits, and really like looking through the data. Which I do all that myself. So I've seen probably over 100 stores, customer data in all these different
Mm-hmm.
ways, and seen the things that are consistent. And the cool thing is, if there are newer stores listening, they can prepare way ahead of time for what the
Mm-hmm.
problems that I see later on. So let's actually start at the end. So larger, more mature stores, then we'll work backwards and we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about how each previous stage can help combat against those issues that we see at later stages.
Mm-hmm.
So stores that have been open for a long time, let's say 10 plus years in mature markets, um, their biggest issues are there's no one that's been consistent using doing their internal marketing with their retention. So we've come in, these stores have been open for 10 plus years and they don't know what to do. Maybe they had someone in at some point. Most cases, they do have a sizable email list, but the biggest problem I've seen is that they've been blasting these people, every single person on the list, like every week, and their open rates have shrunk to like 10 to 15%,
Mm-hmm.
which is not good. We, open rate should be between 25 and say 35% as like a good, healthy average. And there's different ways to inflate that number. So I'm not going to mention too much about that here, but if you're sending to everyone on your list, a really
Mm-hmm.
healthy number would be 25 to 35% open rates. But if you're
Right.
down to 15%, that means Google has likely assigned you a low reputation rating, which means most of
Mm-hmm.
your emails are going to spam. We've also seen over time, over those 10 years, people might have changed their emails or the inboxes are full, and there's reasons why that their emails bounce. And so when we look at these accounts for these stores, they have like thousands of emails that are not even being delivered. And every failed email will also hurt the reputation score. So there's like some minor cleanup that needs to be done, but no one
Mm-hmm.
is paying attention to that. And over time, they just degraded their email health. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to come in and we have to put together this plan to improve that over the next couple months so that we can reach inboxes. For example, we just did this with a couple different clients where we came in and they were getting crazy low open rates. And so we put together a 4 week, 6 week, 8 week deliverability plan. And so we chopped down the amount of people. So say they had 50,000 people on their email list, we might now only be sending to 10 to 20,000 of them. And over the next couple of weeks, but before that, they might have been getting uh, the 10% open rate, which means less people are getting the email, which means less people are converting and it's turning into less dollars. So we chop that by quite a bit, which means you get a little bit less engagement, a little bit less um, dollars coming in. We were able to bump that up to the 30 to 50% open rates. And then over the next couple months, we slowly add more of those emails in, more of those emails in as we start to increase that reputation. Then by the time we have that high reputation again, we're now able to send to the 30 to 50,000 people, and we're getting the high open rates, a lot of engagement, which means more revenue for the retailers. So sometimes you got to take a little step back to take a huge step forward. So put those mature
Cleaning
stores as
data,
like
like I hear,
control.
data cleaning sounds like it's an important part of this.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And there's just been so much churn over the years. So they have a lot of opportunity of bringing in their lost customers back in their store. So that's a huge strategy that we use to make those stores a lot of money. So then we move down the line of the stages, go into a little bit of a smaller store that hasn't been open as long, maybe let's say 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
They're in this like middle stage where I notice a lot of them either do or do not have big lists. And some of them have been very diligent on capturing customer information, some of them not. And when you think about it, if you've been around for 3 to 5 years and you have not been capturing information, you're hurting yourself so bad.
Right.
Because when we've looked at the data too, about 70 to 80% of cannabis consumers shop every 7 to 30 days. So every 1 to 4 weeks, they're coming in and they're stocking up. And here's how we look at that, right? We don't know when these customers are going to buy. It's kind of like consumables at home, like tissues, toilet paper, napkins, or whatever you might have at your house that you
Mhm.
go through. If your closet is packed with toilet paper, and I say, "Here's toilet paper 50% off," you're not going to buy it because you already have way too much. When
Mhm.
you start to get low, then you say, I need to start looking at buying toilet paper. Or sometimes when you run out, you're like, oh shit, I need to go buy toilet paper. And
You
so then you look for the
really
problem.
do say, "Oh shit." Yep.
Yeah, so where's like, oh, I need more paper towel or something that you need at the house, more dish
Right.
soap even.
Right.
And so we don't know when cannabis consumers are going to purchase, but we
Mhm.
need these stores to be top of mind when they're ready. And so if you're not collecting these emails and you're not messaging your customers consistently multiple times a week, you're not going to be top of mind to them. So when it's their time to purchase, they might be getting messages from 2 or 3 other stores, and they're going to go to those stores instead of your store.
Mm.
So once these stores make it past that 3 to 5 year hump, okay, now you made it past probably one of the harder parts. Now you got to survive long term, and that's going to be having a big list to email people
Mhm.
and being able to bring back those lost customers and increase that retention. And then when we go to a little bit smaller stores now that maybe have been open for 6 months plus, like
Mhm.
newer like toddler stores, um, their biggest thing is, okay, you need to convert as many people into the email list because when you first open the first month, right, 99% of those people are going to be new customers,
Mhm.
but we know that half of them won't come back. And so
Mhm.
every month you have less and less new people coming in and less of an opportunity to capture those people to retain them long term. And so for new stores, it's very critical to incentivize, do whatever you can to capture an email, give a discount at checkout, whatever your state compliance is that you can do something there to capture the email. If your state allows a loyalty program, have a rock solid, really good like sign up incentive, give them points. Um, Here's the cool thing about points, and I call it the reward cycle. So when you give someone points, they can't use that purchase because they make a purchase and you can give them points. They can only use their points on the next purchase. So points are a great tool for retention because someone earns points by coming in and making a purchase,
Mhm.
and they can only redeem their points by making another purchase. So
Good hook.
yeah, if you make one purchase, you're
Mhm.
basically starting to accrue this free money, and it's a great hook to get customers back in as well.
Mm.
So yeah, newer stores like that's when they need to um, install and create this retention system so
Mhm.
that they don't have the problems that bigger stores have where they're not capturing emails, where they're having this super high churn, and they're not being top of mind to their customers. So new stores, build your lists, do whatever you can to get prioritize email first, and then you can get a phone number. But the more information you have, the more you can target them in about 3 or 4 other ways later on too.
So it sounds like, I'm hearing a theme here. I definitely have learned a lot. Your email hygiene, I think, is very, very important, right? Your email list. And then you also get rated based on your email health. That's something I learned here from you. So thank you for that. The similarities in successful stores, it sounds like they have a pretty consistent strategy for recording all of their customer data, proactively reaching out, and essentially not letting those go by the wayside, it sounds like, right? Anything
Yeah.
else that you can say you'd see in successful stores?
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
we work with a lot of well-run stores,
Mhm.
successful in their own rights in a lot of different ways, but they're well-run operations at the end of the day. They have their business fundamentals in check. They
Mhm.
understand all their financials. I mean, even from your standpoint, when
Mhm.
you look at some of the more successful stores uh, on the financial end, like are they on top of it? Are they paying attention? I'm assuming they're not, like it's not a mystery to them, right?
Yeah, no, I'd say the successful stores are definitely on top of their numbers. They know their numbers. They're watching their POS. They're watching, how many customers they're getting per day. They know when there's peaks and valleys. They know what to do to try to keep the customers coming back in, keep them happy as much as possible. So those are more successful stores. You have to pay attention to everything, right? And I think also from a financial standpoint, when we work with a customer or a client that is only doing financials for tax returns, they're not proactively engaged. They're not watching their numbers. At the end of the day, this is a business, so you're responsible for staying on top of it. So those are the more successful clients that we work with. Yeah, for sure.
That's a good point. Like being on top of the
Mhm.
numbers and some other characteristics of the more successful stores that we work with is they've tried things, right? Like they've
Mhm.
tried a bunch of different like marketing services out there, marketing channels.
Mhm.
So they're willing to try stuff, but the important thing is they need to understand and trust that what they're presented is true, right? If
Yeah. Good point.
some marketing channel comes back and says, "Hey, we got you a 50x ROI," if someone's getting a 50x ROI, I will I will give them a lot of my personal money to get me a 50x return. That's incredible. But they're not, right? And so that's the important thing
Mm.
is the really well-run operators, they know when things are true and when they're not true. And
Right.
so they're able to ask the questions like 50x ROI, that sounds way too good to be true. That sounds a little bit crazy. Can you explain that? They dig in, they ask questions. And the best retailers that we know, they've asked enough of those right questions. And over time, they've gotten rid of marketing or advertising channels or services or platforms that are not giving them the most truthful and honest results. And then they keep the ones that do.
Hmm.
So when I was starting, my services, I saw that a lot. There's these platforms and companies out there that would just leech money from these retailers
Hmm.
and not give them anything back in return. So I wanted to make sure that we created a service that would actually, like I said earlier, create an investment for them. It's a very, very positive ROI.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be anything crazy like 20x, because you're not really going to find that in a lot of places, if at all in cannabis. But if you can reliably have a 4, 5, 8, 10x return, and you can prove it the entire way, then that's really good. They're never going to stop paying you. So that's what we did. We found these ways to prove our the return that the money that they're giving us is actually coming back to them in very large numbers.
Hmm.
But being able to prove it throughout the entire system with our data, with logic, and with their own information that we find in the POS. And so we did find that these retailers that are the most successful, they're asking questions, they understand and they trust uh, the people that are offering these services, and they get rid of very quickly the ones that uh, are not honest
Yeah.
and
Well,
come from a
ultimately, you're
shady
not
place.
going to make it in the industry for very long if you're practicing. You have practices like that. It's because word spreads quickly in the industry. All across the whole country, all across the whole world, and it doesn't matter where you are. So the people that are here today and not here tomorrow, now you know why, because they're not delivering those results. So, but unfortunately, to your point, a lot of folks have actually fallen into the traps, and they were the test cases or the experiments. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're still around years from now as a service provider in the industry, it actually means something. It means you've actually delivered results. So I love that idea of asking questions. I think that's really, really important. And I think that people who are outside of the industry are quite pleasantly surprised when they come in and they find out how bright, these operators are and how on it they are, you have to live by ingenuity. You have to be ahead of the curve here. So, yeah, I'd say it's really, really important to be on top of everything and ask the right questions. That's very good insights. That's how you learn, right? Yeah.
It is.
So what I'd like to ask as a wrap up, any key takeaways? What can you do as a retailer? Really high level key takeaways.
Yeah. For all the retailers, no matter what stage they're in, it's just like be diligent on your data.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have anyone in-house dedicated to your data, dedicated to your marketing, and we've seen a lot of turnover over the years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone comes in, they're handling all this stuff, and then they leave. Whether it's a marketing person in-house or a data person in-house or some type of tech person,
Mm-hmm.
they leave, and then these retailers are stuck paying thousands of dollars a month for these platforms that aren't being used or utilized very well. And one of the common fallacies that I see a lot is that, like, oh, this platform is better than this platform. Remember, these are all tools, and in the hands of the right craftsman, they can use any tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
NBA basketball player, doesn't matter what fancy shoe they're wearing, they could wear no shoes, and they could school anyone out there. And
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't matter if they have a slightly deflated ball where the ball has no grip. They have the fundamentals
Mm-hmm.
and they have the mastery to use any tool out there. And so a lot of people get caught up on these platforms. Yes, there are some platforms that truly are better than others, but in the right hands, they're all going to work to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have these platforms, you're not paying, and you're paying for them, but you don't have anyone to run them, find an outside consultant, expert, agency, a service that isn't really going anywhere that can help you utilize them better until you get back on your feet, until you can have someone in-house to do that. Because one of the biggest issues we have seen with a lot of these other retailers is that the turnover of someone handling these. They might have
Totally.
been sending out amazing email campaigns, and then they stop because this person left and now their customers aren't being communicated to. So yeah, being diligent and all that, and trusting the right type of people in this industry.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm sure everybody learned so much here. How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, best place is LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I post, and I post about different educational topics. It's a lot of just showing people how to do things. I give away just a lot of free information, tactics, and strategies. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to follow up on what I'm trying to teach the industry, and just message me, and I'm happy to get back to everyone.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to the Beard Bros. Rachel right here with Steve Riparip of Tact Firm. Thanks for coming on. And depending on when this airs, which should be soon, we'll have come back from Germany and done ICBC. We'll have a big party out there. Beard Bros, Good Life Gang, awesome brunch. Oh, air date, we'll be airing this on May 16th. So yeah, by that time we'll definitely be home from Berlin. So that should be fun on our worldwide tour out there. And with that, thank you so much and have a great day.